may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, let's get this going. Let's talk about one of the most exciting offenses in the entire NFL this offseason. I really wanted to talk about this team, and then down in the comment section of the last video, we had a ton of people asking us to go over the Los Angeles Rams. So, of course, guys, if you have a team that you want me to talk about, go down to the comment section here. That way, for the video on tomorrow, I know what team we should be discussing. And also, while you are down there, make sure you are dropping a like, and more importantly, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. I know that we really never talk about it, and it's because I naturally assume that everybody watching these videos was subscribed. But diving into the analytics, it looks like about 50% of the audience that watches these videos is not subscribed to the channel. So please, guys, what are you doing? Go fix your life. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell next to it. That way you can come out to the premieres with all these videos. Whenever we do our live mock draft later on this week, you can come out and you can participate in the mock draft. But that's it. Let's dive into it. And obviously, the main excitement that you have here with this offense in 2021 is the fact that you finally have an above average quarterback coming in Matthew Stafford. So essentially, the Matthew Stafford acquisition cost LA Jared Goff and 2 first-round picks. So I know a lot of people are probably going to spend their time arguing down in the comment section, how much better is Matthew Stafford than Jared Goff? Is it an actual upgrade? And I'm sitting here going, well, yeah, of course it's an upgrade. Why would you think that this team would be willing to spend that extra capital to bring in Matthew Stafford if Sean McVay in this front office didn't think that they were going to be able to do great things with Stafford in comparison to Jared Goff lowering their ceiling? I mean, Jared Goff has been known to be a quarterback that really was not calling any of the shots, someone that was more so just a puppet for Sean McVay. And now Matthew Stafford, someone with some arm strength, hopefully someone that can read an NFL defense coming in, should open up so much for all the players here. And that's why I think a lot of these players are actually going to be great values. Now, if you go through and you look at what Matthew Stafford has done over the past few years, I'm going to focus in over the past 2 seasons, because if we know that you look at Matthew Stafford's numbers on the whole, I mean, he came into the NFL in one of the worst situations possible in Detroit, and he was also extremely young at the time he started. So he has a lot of games in his career sample that was literally just one of the worst situations in the NFL for a quarterback that had no experience. That's a far different situation than what you have with the 33-year-old Matthew Stafford in LA right now. So I think it's easier just to look over the past 2 seasons and try to expect what you can have for this year. And nonetheless, over the past 2 years, Matthew Stafford has averaged a little over 275 passing yards a game. He's had 45 total touchdowns. And keep in mind, guys, his 2019 season did get cut halfway through, and only 15 interceptions. So now I know these numbers don't necessarily look extremely exciting, but you have to understand the context in which this was done. So if you go to 2020, the season where he played all 16 games, I mean, the majority of the numbers are coming from 2020. And we go, what situation was this? Well, his leading wide receiver was Marvin Jones. Keep that in mind. His number 1 wide receiver on this offense was Marvin Jones. I mean, if you go across every offense in the NFL, I mean, can you find a worse situation than this? Now, TJ Hawkinson was next best on this list, but he also played 16 games. After that, I mean, you had Danny Amendola. So Marvin Jones, TJ Hawkinson, and Danny Amendola are your top 3 options for Matthew Stafford in 2020. I mean, what are we talking about here? And obviously, a lot of people are going to be going, Mason, are you forgetting Kenny Golladay? Golladay played 5 games. Kenny Golladay played 5 games, and a few of those, he was dealing with nagging injuries. I think that we can say Golladay pretty much was a non-factor in this 2020 season for Matthew Stafford. Now, in 2019, that was where, if you look at Matthew Stafford's per-game numbers, I mean, it looked like he was going to be an MVP consideration. I mean, Matthew Stafford was on an absurd track in 2019. That is when he had Kenny Golladay healthy for all 16 games. Beyond that, I mean, his next best wide receivers were Marvin Jones and Danny Amendola once again. So I think it's safe to say that when he's dealing with Darrell Bevell and Matt Patricia as his head coaches over these seasons, and the main option for Matthew Stafford throughout these 2 years was Marvin Jones, that Matthew Stafford is coming from one of the worst situations in the entire NFL to LA, where now he is going to have an insane upgrade at head coach for Sean McVay, someone that we know is an offensive mind. Then you also add on the fact that he is getting the upgrade as his wide receiver 1, at his wide receiver 2, at his wide receiver 3, and at his running back. So, it's absurd with what you're going to be expecting from Matthew Stafford in comparison from when he was in Detroit. Matthew Stafford, I think, has to be a buy, and I think that he is going to be what makes us so excited about the other pieces on this team. Now, let's go over to a player that I don't want to say helped blow up this channel, but I think we got a lot more recognition whenever we were on record just nonstop saying Cam Akers is the man. Cam Akers we had as one of the best rookie running backs of last year, halfway through the season. As y'all remember, we were just going, get Cam Akers off your waiver wire. Get Cam Akers off your waiver wire. We don't care that he is currently a healthy scratch for these games because he's not healthy. He's still dealing with the rib injury. They just don't really want to announce it to the public. And that's exactly what ended up happening with Cam Akers finally coming on strong at the end of the year. And now coming into this next year, Malcolm Brown is gone. Malcolm Brown, a running back that was getting a decent amount of targets out of the backfield. Now you have Cam Akers, who's going to be the feature down running back. A lot of people know this. Now, this is why Cam Akers is going in the late first, early second round of redraft leagues in 2021. So you're going to have to pay up for Cam Akers. But what's crazy, absurd about Cam Akers is he's only 21 years old. He is younger than both Travis Etienne and Najee Harris, both running backs who have yet to step on a football field. Cam Akers, if you look at his 2 playoff performances, averaged 23 rush attempts, a reception and a half, 136 total yards, and 2 touchdowns. So those are clearly bell cow numbers from Cam Akers. Cam Akers showed that he had that bell cow capability. And the one thing that you can look at, and the one thing that may stand out as a red flag from whenever Cam Akers did handle the majority of the workload in LA last year, was the fact that the receiving volume wasn't there for Cam Akers. And that's something that I think we can completely overlook. Now, y'all know with Antonio Gibson, that is another player that I'm saying, hey, I understand he didn't catch the ball as a rookie, but that does not mean that he cannot do that at the NFL level. Now, what we have to do with players that are as young as Cam Akers, keep in mind, he's younger than Travis Etienne, younger than Najee Harris, is we have to kind of give him a pass for his rookie season. We have to go, okay, yes, he didn't catch the ball, but can we take a step back? Do we have reason to believe that this can change somewhere down the line? And we can, because you go back to Florida State, Cam Akers averaged about 2.75 receptions a game at Florida State. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to understand the context that this was done in. This was done when the Florida State offense was only completing 21 passes a game. So Akers was then averaging over 10% of the receiving production for a collegiate offense. That simply never happens at the running back position. You rarely ever see that happen. And it shows us that Cam Akers does have the receiving down capability. Now, yes, he was giving it up to Malcolm Brown last year, but Malcolm Brown is no longer there. And even when Darrell Henderson himself was the starting running back over a duration for 2020 for the LA Rams, Darrell Henderson wasn't a pass catcher running back in his own right. So Cam Akers should come in. Cam Akers should be a 3-down guy in 2021. Now, because his ADP is already in the late first, I think at that price point, we say he's a hold just because you're going to be looking at the other players in that range. You can go and go, hey, all these guys are fantastic. I would really like to get any of these players on my team. But still, guys, if you're in the late first, don't be scared of drafting Cam Akers. He is easily worth this price. Okay, so now when we go through and when we evaluate these wide receivers, let's try to break it down between Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. And I want to talk about why I'm so excited about Robert Woods. Now, if we go over to Robert Woods, yes, he's the older of the two. He is 29 years old. He has an ADP at 47, so you're going to be taking him at the very end of the 4th, the very beginning of the 5th, pretty much as your wide receiver 2 or 3 on your roster every time. But I wouldn't mind having Robert Woods as our wide receiver 1 on our roster. If you go through in 2020, Robert Woods was the wide receiver 15 in points per game. And really, he came on strong after the bye. Before the bye week, he was only wide receiver 19. And then afterwards, that's when he was really able to come on. That's when he was really able to start taking the majority of the production in the LA offense. And he's also a very consistent wide receiver. You go back in 2019, he was also the wide receiver 17 in points per game. So going through and looking at Robert Woods, you're looking at a guy that has been consistently a mid wide receiver 2, then a high-end wide receiver 2, and now he is getting that massive quarterback upgrade. At the same time, there are going to be more targets available in this offense now that you have Josh Reynolds gone, now that you also have Gerald Everett gone from this team. So we're going, okay, I mean, there are vacated targets. There's a much better quarterback coming in that should bump up the overall efficiency of the offense. And something else I want to talk about is the kind of quarterback that Matthew Stafford is and why I think he is going to fit well with Robert Woods. And that's Matthew Stafford is not someone looking to check the ball down. He's not looking to throw it to the wide receiver in the slot. He's not looking to throw it close to the line of scrimmage. Stafford has consistently been in the top 5 of air yards per pass attempt. And if y'all don't really understand what that means, it pretty much means how far downfield is the wide receiver at the time the pass is intended. It takes away yards after the completion. It really just shows the aggressiveness of the quarterback. And there you see that Matthew Stafford is someone willing to take those shots downfield. And Robert Woods does have a higher average depth of target than Cooper Kupp by almost a yard. So that is going to be notable going, hey, the fit is a little more natural here with Woods compared to Kupp. And that's going to lead us right into Cooper Kupp, who is going in a very similar range in drafts. He has an ADP of 54. So he's going to be going about a half a round after Robert Woods. And here I think it's an easy decision. I think you go Robert Woods. I mean, Robert Woods is going to be our buy on this offense. I think that's a very affordable price. I think you're kind of buying him at his floor. And if he proves anything more than that, it's just going to crush his ADP. Now, Cooper Kupp at 54, here it's a little bit harder to see because you go to 2020, Cooper Kupp was actually the wide receiver 26 in points per game. So obviously a massive drop from Robert Woods. And also, Cooper Kupp was a little bit different, and Cooper Kupp kind of slowed down as the season went on, where he's the wide receiver 26 on the season, yet before the bye week, he was actually a low-end wide receiver 2, and then after the bye week, he drops all the way down to wide receiver 33 in points per game. So Cooper Kupp ended 2020 very poorly compared to where he started. And this is a trend that we're starting to see with Cooper Kupp. I don't understand why. If y'all have any hypotheses down in the comment section below, I would love to check them out. But in 2019, we saw the same thing with Kupp, where he came out and he had a very good season, but it was all at the beginning of the year. I mean, before the bye week, he was a top 5 wide receiver in points per game. And after the bye week, he falls all the way down to wide receiver 46 in points per game. So just a night and day difference for Cooper Kupp with no injury on the record for us to look at. So please, if y'all have any idea why we've seen this consistent fall off after the bye week for Cooper Kupp in the LA Rams offense, I would love to know your thoughts why. I would love to try to figure this out. But because Cooper Kupp also playing out of the slot has that lower average depth of target, I think that Matthew Stafford's going to be looking to go in the way of Robert Woods a little bit more compared to Cooper Kupp. So for that, I think that Kupp, it's hard to say that he's a sell just because I really want as many pieces of this offense as we can. But if we're having to label someone a sell here, it's going to be Cooper Kupp. Now, someone else I want to bring up and someone else that I hated on last offseason is Tyler Higbee. So y'all know we were not drafting Tyler Higbee anywhere close to his ADP last year. I mean, we were looking at 2019. We were going, hey, yes, he had a very dominant sample at the end of the year. But if you look at his entire career before that, Tyler Higbee was really a tight end that wasn't even on the radar. Of course, we are always going to be looking at the larger sample rather than trying to hyper-focus on the small one. But nonetheless, this has been a fantastic offseason for Tyler Higbee. Not only do you have a much better quarterback coming in who should be able to raise the overall efficiency of the offense, at the same time, the other tight end on this roster that was very talented, that's a former second-round draft pick, Gerald Everett, now is going over to the Seattle Seahawks. So Tyler Higbee is another one of these players where we go, yeah, we didn't like him last offseason, but this offseason, he, A, lost competition, B, got a much better quarterback, so he's going to be expecting more volume with more efficiency to come along with that. And now you're actually having to invest a much cheaper price with Tyler Higbee. I mean, it's not like the players changed at all, so this doesn't add up at all. I think Tyler Higbee is the best buy that you can find in this entire offense. Now, I know in 2020 it was very bad. He was the tight end 22 in points per game. But still, guys, I mean, it's the same player y'all were drafting much higher last offseason. I don't understand what has changed here. Higbee is going to be a player that I'm actually willing to go out of my way and try to target in drafts. Okay, so now let's bring up Tutu Atwell just because we got a comment asking us to talk about Tutu Atwell. And essentially the comment was saying, can he be the next Tyreek Hill? And the answer to that is no. Guys, I understand a lot of people want to point at players that are outliers and go, hey, I mean, maybe he can turn into this. But no, you can't be expecting that with Tutu Atwell. He's actually not being drafted in redraft leagues for 2021 right now. And I don't think he should be drafted. He's someone that you can completely avoid. And I'm not saying he's going to be a very bad football player. I think that he can serve a purpose on the LA Rams. This is why they took him in the second round with their 25th pick in that round. But if you're looking at Tutu Atwell, he profiles to be a wide receiver that brings speed to his offense, that's going to be able to stretch the field, and he's going to be able to make sure that players underneath him actually have more space to operate, and that the safeties have to give the respect to Atwell, and they can't just crash down over the middle. So Tutu Atwell, he's going to come in. He is also going to raise the efficiency of the offense, but he's not going to be a high volume player. He's not someone getting targeted very often. He's 155 pounds. I mean, you're never going to expect this guy to be someone that can even reach 50 receptions in a season. So no, Tutu Atwell, don't draft him. Don't even think about him. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. Of course, if y'all did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, that's it. I will get to y'all with the video tomorrow. Thank you so much for everyone supporting the show on Patreon. And Dominic, Jim, Carl, Jesse, Tyler, Eric, Colby, Cameron, Mike, and Marcus, thank you guys.